Hey, welcome back to the show, The Pursuit of Happy Well. We're so excited you're here today.
Today, we are tackling a big one, self-sabotage. Why we undermine our goals and get in our own way even when we know better. Because here's the thing, it's not because you're lazy, it's not a lack of willpower, it's actually something much deeper. And while self-sabotage isn't your fault, it is your responsibility to do something about it.
Oh boy, I feel like we're in for a doozy today.
It is, but it's a really common one. And like I've told you, with all the people I've coached and served, this is probably the number one thing that comes up for people. The big question they ask themselves is, why do I keep getting in my own way?
Yeah, I hear that all the time. Every time I reach for an Oreo when I'm trying to be in a cut. Seriously though.
Why am I doing this? Somebody make it stop.
Oh, it's so good. So today we're going to talk about what it is. What is self-sabotage? We're going to then talk about why self-awareness is something that you can use, your superpower, if you will, to address it, and then practical steps to create self-awareness.
Yeah, again, because we're not about you just consuming this episode or this show. We want you to feel empowered to take small action to actually implement change in your life. Because again, consumption of information is not what creates transformation. It's you implementing and taking action. So we want to make sure that we're helping you do that.
So good. Hey, if you really enjoy what we're doing here on this show, on this podcast, can you take just a moment right now, hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, hit the bell for notifications. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, hit subscribe, send it to a friend. It would really help us get this show out there into the world. And a lot of people, I think, could benefit from this, just awareness.
Yeah, this isn't just about business. This is in every area of your life that you desire to improve. Because here's the thing is, your brain doesn't differentiate between positive change or negative change. It just sees change as a very scary thing. And so this really could serve anyone at any phase of life. So be sure to share it with a friend. All right, you ready to dig into it?
I think I'm ready. Let's jump in. I'm thinking it's going to be a lot of just like, how do you know so much about me?
Yeah. It's like the first step of self-awareness is you're going to feel like we're reading your diary.
So this show is just purely based upon Kristen's observations of Scott.
Not of you, or just of 8,000, a large sample size of people where I've watched it over and over again with myself, with others, with students I serve. And I think it's really important that this conversation is not meant to make you feel bad. If anything, I hope it normalizes. I hope you just maybe give yourself some grace in realizing that you are human, just like everyone else. Not a single person is, protected from or
being called out.
Yeah, no one's being called out in this. Okay, so shame is not welcome in this conversation. What we want to do is bring awareness. So,
good. What
is self-sabotage?
All right, jump right in. What is self-sabotage?
Okay, so a lot of people think self-sabotage is like a form of, getting in their way. Why am I doing this? Like they see it as a form of self-harm. And that's actually the wrong way of looking at it. And kind of what I was alluding to earlier is the brain, its only job is to keep you safe, and change is a perceived threat to the brain. And so we have these goals. You could have this, okay, here's where I want to go, what I want to do, this change I want to make in my life. Again, your brain does not differentiate between this change is to better me or this change is a negative change. It just sees change as, oh no, we're going to have to change how we do things, which means disrupting the status quo. And your brain really doesn't want to expend the energy to create change. And so we have a natural cognitive resistance, natural brain resistance to all change. And so because it disrupts patterns, it disrupts how we show up, it disrupts stories. And in order to create change, you actually have to create new patterns. And the brain, it's just lazy. You're not lazy. Your brain is. All of our brains are. Kind
of like when whenever you send me to the grocery store to go find a certain item on the aisle, my least favorite thing that happens is when companies change their labels. And I can never find the salsa that I like because the label is totally different. I hate when they change labels. You don't?
Yeah.
Is that just okay? Apparently, that's just me.
No. So I'm just saying. So is that in relation to brain science and
I'm lazy.
yeah,
I don't want to look for
spend the time looking
for the label,
for
right?
the new label. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the brain is the same way. Give it a new task. It's like, I don't want to expend the energy in doing that new thing. So instead of seeing it as self-harm, what you first need to understand about self-sabotage is if we could reframe it into a form of self-preservation. It's self-protection, or a form of how your brain is coping with a form of distress. Because anytime you bring about change, it sends a signal where your brain's like, I feel some distress because I'm not able to just go to the shelf, pick up the thing, or, have little resistance. The moment we introduce change, we're introducing resistance. And we all have responses that we carry to resistance. You have a response that you have created, whether from, your upbringing. You've probably carried that for a long time with how you specifically respond to resistance. And so that is kind of the what self-sabotage is. So we're going to throw out this idea of it being self-harm or something's wrong with you. We're just going to understand it from the brain science level and just be like, no, this is just a form of coping with change. This is how you cope with change, how your brain handles it.
So on that note, just as a kind of little tangent here a little bit, is that how habits kind of become so routine and normalized, as the brain is attempting to save energy, right? Like, in the sense of maybe what's one reason why habits are so hard to break is because you're too lazy to
100%
address those.
Yeah, 100%. So anytime you want to change a habit or, change an outcome, well, we have to look at what are my current habits that are creating my current outcomes. So if you want to change the outcome, you have to go to the source, the habits. And so this is why there's so much resistance, or why habits are so hard to change, just because at the brain level, the neuroscience level, our brain is so resistant to creating new habits and patterns. Why? Because it expends energy. We have to think about it differently. It takes more time. So the brain's naturally going to have resistance to that and want to fall back to old patterns. Why? Because it conserves energy. So this is why habits are so hard to form.
Interesting. Okay, that's good.
Yes. So why does it happen? So we have this idea of self-protecting, coping. It's just like, okay, if it's a form of self-preservation, then we have to ask ourselves, well, what is it trying to save you from? What is the perceived risk? Because it's just like, well, I'm just trying to lose 10 pounds. How is there risk in losing 10 pounds? Why does my brain have fear around that? That's such a weird thing to have fear about. Or maybe, I need to have a social media account and I'm going to make a post. Well, why is my brain having so much drama or resistance to just making a post or doing this thing? Because I saw this happen with my students. We always have to ask the question, well, what is my brain trying to protect me from? And it usually is from some type of negative emotional experience. A lot of time it's frustration. How often do we not like the emotional experience of frustration? I mean, we're parents. We know. Like, look at our kids. How do our kids handle frustration? We're constant.
Not well.
But what is our job as parents? What are we constantly doing with them when it comes to frustration?
Yeah, I think part of it is like helping them control their breathing, helping them understand why or where they're getting frustrated. And I think even in that, I think also trying to help them not around frustration.
Yes.
But through it.
It's almost like building their tolerance to it.
Yeah, frustration
It's almost
tolerance.
like pain tolerance, but you want to build frustration tolerance. And there are studies that show that the more frustration tolerance you can bear, the more likely you are to have success or create results in specific areas. And so, how often, I think this is a great question to think about if you're listening or watching. Just ask yourself, what is my frustration tolerance? When was the last situation I put myself in to actually grow my frustration tolerance?
Okay. That's convicting. That's super convicting, because I'm just thinking right now, I'm like, okay, well, there's certain areas in life where I feel like my frustration tolerance is pretty high. And then there are certain areas in life where my frustration tolerance is non-existent.
I love that you say that, though, because I think it's true. I think there can be certain areas where we have relatively high frustration tolerance, but in other areas of our life, it's abysmally low. So for me, I have fairly high levels of frustration tolerance when I'm solving a marketing or a business problem. I can be stubborn as heck and be like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. My problem solver comes out. I enjoy it. My frustration tolerance with fitness and weight loss, you know this.
Yeah.
It is low. It is considerably low. And I had to build up my own threshold for that. So I think there can be areas in your life where you're like, oh, I have really high frustration tolerance in this area, but not in this area. And actually, comment below if you're watching on YouTube, just say like, oh, here's areas where I have, higher tolerance, and here's areas where I have no tolerance. Like I think of my mom, and if she's listening or watching, I love you so much, Mom. But like my mom's frustration tolerance with tech, zero. Like, let's just be honest. Us millennials and Gen X, we were just born into being the tech support for
Can't tell you how many
for
times.
our parents' generation. Not my dad. My dad is the tech guy, but my mom, no tolerance with tech. It's just like the remote gets thrown and she walks away in less than 10 seconds. So again, why is your brain, what is it trying to protect you from? A lot of times it's frustration. Other examples could be fear of failure, fear of success, unworthiness, rejection, abandonment. There's oftentimes it's some emotional experience that we perceive as discomfort on any level. So you might have to ask, like, in this instance, what is my brain trying to protect me from? Oh, the pain of being misunderstood by my peers. That is a real one for a lot of people. And, we are people who are built like humans. We're just desired to want to connect and belong. So anything that puts us at risk from feeling disconnected from others or not belonging anymore, that's a deeply primal need that's being threatened in the moment, So of course we're going to self-sabotage. In fact, I'm going to give an interesting stat by Psychology Today. Nearly 80% of people engage in some form of self-sabotage. I think the other 20% is lying.
They're self-sabotaging the
They're
results.
lying, yeah. Yeah, you self-sabotage by lying in this survey.
Oh my gosh.
Because to not self-sabotage, I believe, is to not be human.
Maybe,
I just think we're learning to get better.
But maybe they've just tapped into their superpower of self-awareness already.
Oh, which leads us to, wait, we're not there yet.
I know.
Wait, are we there?
No,
we're not. So wait, let's talk about some examples of self-sabotage.
Yeah, that'd be helpful, because I'm over here thinking that I just can't get anything done. Because I'm just thinking about all the frustration tolerances. Like how do I really categorize some of these areas where there might be some self-sabotage in my own life?
Yes.
Can you talk about like just what are some areas where this shows up?
I think it really boils down to how we respond to stress, because change is a form of stress that we're placing on the mind or on the body. And so it's like, how are you conditioned to respond to stress? And there's 4 kind of responses, that happens at our nervous system level. So it's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So a fight response could be, so for me, I tend to, when I'm stressed, I can go into a fight response, which might mean like, I'm going to busy myself. I'm going to go in like, or I'll aggressively problem solve the thing, or, I'll take control of the thing. Why? What was that?
No, I'm laughing.
I heard that smirk.
No, I'm laughing because it just reminds me of when I was in college and grad school, and you want to talk about self-sabotaging.
Oh, I knew this one. Yeah.
You could tell whenever I had a big paper due because my room would be clean.
Yeah.
And that wasn't because it helped me write my paper. It's because I was avoiding writing my paper.
Yeah, we call that buffering.
Yes.
When you're buffering and busying yourself with something else before the actual task. And that's a huge one for a lot of people. A form of flight would be like scrolling on your phone, maybe running to do I think it's like busy work that doesn't actually move the needle, or, it's just, there's so many different types. Perfectionism, like getting caught up and it has to be perfect, it has to be right, and nothing ever gets put out. Gosh, what's another one?
Kind of like a paralysis analysis type of.
Yes, paralysis by analysis. Like that one's just like, the more I research, the more I'll hopefully know. And they hope research provides clarity. But the truth is, guys, that action is the fastest way to have clarity on anything. We can research everything, but it's when you live it out, you actually have lived experience. It gives you much faster data, real-time feedback. What's another one? People scrolling, reading, Amazon shopping, impulsive shopping.
Hey.
Food's a big one. Is
Yeah.
just like people running to, because what's happening is in the task when you're experiencing the resistance, the stress in your body. If you haven't actually learned how to manage that feeling, have the frustration tolerance with uncomfortable feelings, and you don't know how to sit in that. Which, let's be honest, most of us, this is not something you are born with. This is a learned skill. Learning to sit with discomfort or feelings of stress without trying to find the nearest escape hatch, which could be, food, video games, whatever is going to help give you. I kind of see it as like a pressure valve. And any type of self-sabotage or coping mechanism, so to speak, is like releasing pressure, and it provides temporary, relief, but it always creates it compounds the stress on the back end.
If it's not handled.
Yeah. You were always telling me like, babe, just eat the frog. And I'm like, you said it so much in our marriage. I'm like, stop telling me to eat the frog. Where if people don't know that analogy, tell the people.
Well, this is not my own.
This is for our procrastinators.
Yeah, this is not my own idea, but basically eat the frog is the frog is going to continue to grow, right? So if you have a task to do, let's just make that task is a frog. There's actually, there's a friend of mine, I think on Facebook that started working out at a gym, and it was called Eat the Frog Fitness. So shout out to you, whoever owns that gym. But it's like this idea that I need to get my fitness in.
Yeah.
And the more I put it off, the bigger that frog is going to become. Mm-hmm. And the harder it is to then eat that frog because it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
That's such a gross analogy. I just picture like the sliminess and
Fair. So maybe that helps you get the task done in the sense of like, it's a small frog to begin with, but the more I put it off, the bigger that frog's going to get. So that's the idea behind like, hey, just eat the frog.
I think about that
get
gym.
The task done.
If that's the gym, I'm like, so are they only open till like 8 a.m.? Be like, sorry, we're only open in the morning where you can eat the frog. You can't delay or push out your workout all day.
The secret knock is actually just a croak.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Is that too far on the analogy?
I don't know. I feel like it was a dad joke.
Thanks.
It didn't land.
It hopped?
Oh my God. Oh my gosh. All right. So now that we've talked about real life that's ridiculous.
Thanks.
All right. So now that we've talked about like what self-sabotage is, why we do it.
Well, and as you've been thinking, as you've been listening, I'm just curious, like what pops into your head? If you're watching on YouTube, drop maybe what you think your self-sabotage type is in the comments below. And no shame, just to be aware. And if you're listening on a podcast, maybe it's a mental note. If you're driving, please just keep driving. And otherwise, write that down. Write it in a journal. Here's some areas in which maybe I am self-sabotaging.
Yeah. And here's the thing, though. Self-sabotage does not happen on a conscious level. We often don't realize we're doing it in the moment. It's not like we're, scrolling and being like, here I am undermining my goals. Like we just find ourselves scrolling or, we find ourselves distracted with something. I know people that are like, oh, every time I sit down to do work, I find myself being like, is that the laundry? I should like build out my grocery list or my meal plan. They don't realize in the moment, oh, hold on. My brain is currently, in an active rebellion against this form of, resistance it's feeling. We don't. We are often going through and it's very unconscious, which is why self-awareness is the key for breaking your patterns. Because again, it's not your fault that you self-sabotage. It's a self-preservation skill, but it is your responsibility to learn how to handle that, how to, again, build your tolerance for how you respond to, the stress of change, whether it's good change or bad change.
Yeah.
But we're talking about positive change.
Yeah. No. Yeah. That's so good. And a lot of this, I would assume, is kind of rooted in our childhood. That's where we develop some of those self-sabotage coping mechanisms.
Yeah. I even think a powerful reframe is just, as I was saying earlier, is just seeing it as coping skills to stress.
Yeah.
Period. And if we could just all remember that, I think we'd have a lot more compassion for ourselves and curiosity when we are noticing self-sabotage. And that really is the key because, so often when people kind of are on the other side of self-sabotage, like, an hour after they've scrolled and they're like, oh my gosh, so much lost time. Oh gosh, I did it again. I meant to do this thing, or I meant to go work out, or I meant to go, get some work done. And then all I see this happen so often is, okay, they see it after the fact. They didn't have self-awareness in the act, but they see it later. And then instead of using it as a time to, what my therapist would say, make a compassionate inquiry, all the shame comes in and they're like, why do I do that? Why can't I just, do this better? And that shame starts writing the story of like, this is why I never do these things. And we see people, just take a shame stick and beat themselves over the head with it, thinking if I just shame myself into good behavior, then it's going to work. And I can tell you, I love this statement that was said by on a retreat I went by a very wise mentor. And he said, everyone is here because shame doesn't work. Because if shame worked, it would have worked by now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's so powerful, especially when it comes to understanding, our coping styles. So self-awareness, here's the thing. Without self-awareness, you're an autopilot. You're constantly reacting to life. Life is happening to you. We're constantly, falling victim, so to speak, to subconscious habits and patterns and wondering, why is my life not actually getting better? Well, we have to bring awareness. And so what happens with awareness though? When we actually bring awareness into it.
Yeah.
If lack of awareness is autopilot, then what's awareness?
Yeah, I would say awareness is going to give you, I assume it's going to give you some choice.
Yes.
Some power back. Then your self-awareness, that's where self-awareness becomes your superpower.
Yes. It's the key to everything because it puts you back in the driver's seat. Right. And so, can you think of an area or a time where maybe you were like, you know what, once I had awareness, I was able to address this thing. Maybe areas where you're like, I didn't even know until I, brought awareness to it and then I was able to change it.
Yeah. I would say, currently I tore my calf skiing.
In a ski accident. That's how Scott started 2025.
Ski accident makes it sound like it was pretty intense and it was really
Babe,
cool.
you were in a toboggan down the hill with ski patrol. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. But I guess what I'm saying is like I wasn't going off some big cornice or something, or like in the freestyle park. I was.
Oh, you could have totally let people interpret that. You
actually, I was going down a triple black diamond.
You had the opportunity to let people see you as an extreme parkour.
Oh yeah, not
parkour,
not me. But all that to say, I tore my calf, and so I'm having to do physical therapy to get that back, get the range of motion back, and all these things. And there was this moment in physical therapy, and that was very eye-opening. And so I was doing an exercise, and I don't know how I describe this to you if you're listening, but basically my therapist was having me do these like jumping lunges, I guess, into a paused single leg stand. Mm-hmm. And as I was doing that, I felt like I was doing a pretty good job. I was like, oh, this is no problem, right? I wasn't getting any pain. I was landing. I was alternating legs, and it was great. It was really good. And then he said, hey, hold on. Let me go get my phone. I'm going to record you in slow motion. And I was like, oh, cool. He's going to show me that my calf,
good I'm doing.
Yeah, how good I'm doing. That my calf is like really getting strong again, whatever. He records me, and he shows me the video, and he points out, he said, okay, my right leg's the good leg. Left leg is the one that I tore. I'm landing on my right leg, and I'm landing on the ball of my foot. Perfect. He's like, this looks great. Now let's go look at your left leg. And I'm jumping, and I think I'm doing it right. It feels right. It feels good, at least in my head and so forth. But what he shows me in the slow-mo is he grants me this perspective. So from a third party, this perspective that I actually was, I don't know, pulling my punches, if you will, in the sense that I was actually landing on my heel in this jump and not on the ball of my foot on my left calf. The reason I bring that up is because what was happening is I thought I was doing it right.
Like, were you convinced in your head I was like, I am landing on?
Yeah, I was convinced I was doing it right.
The ball of my foot or my toe.
Absolutely convinced I was doing it right. And But instead, what my mind was doing or my body was doing was still protecting my calf, because landing on the heel didn't demand any contraction from the calf. Basically, it took the calf out of the equation.
That's crazy.
And it's super crazy. And even though I was thinking I was doing it right, I felt like I was landing well. He's like, here, look, this is your calf. As you land, you can see your calf is like flopping around, like it's not engaged. And it's because you're landing on the heel. Your body is still attempting to protect the injury. And this is why we do physical therapy. We do this to help remind your body that your muscle or whatever is injured can actually work again. So it was this like aha moment that I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Had he not done this and helped me be aware, I would have thought I was doing the exercise properly.
That is an amazing analogy, just because it goes to show that it was truly happening at a subconscious level. And again,
100%.
Just like with coping skills or your self-sabotage, it's your brain protecting you from perceived pain. And so that's what your brain was doing, being like putting you into this place where it would not, flex your calf muscle because it was still protecting it, thinking 100%. It was injured.
Yep.
And it took you, with somebody showing you a video, hindsight to actually see that. This is actually perfect for self-awareness because, again, it's not to beat you up. It's not to make you feel bad. We have to be able to, if we're unable to in the moment, and we're going to talk about that next, but if we're unable to in the moment catch ourselves in the act of self-sabotage, then we have the gift of hindsight. We have, and how do we do that? So instead of in that moment where you're like, oh my gosh, I was scrolling again, and shaming yourself and why can't I do this? Because I see people doing that. Like, why do I keep doing this? And they keep grabbing different tools to solve for the self-sabotage. Like, maybe I just need the habit tracker or the planner. Stop buying planners. Stop buying planners. That is not solving the problem.
I think we need a new title for this episode.
People are going to feel so called out, but the planners is not the solution. We actually have to go deeper to the why. We've got to get to your brain. And so with hindsight, the $1 million question to ask yourself is, what was I protecting myself from? Was it rejection, abandonment, discomfort, frustration, being misunderstood? The $1 million question. And then what you actually have to do is tell a different story to your brain about why that activity is actually safe for you to do. So same for your PT work with your therapist. Like, your brain was like, can't do this. Or your brain was like, we can't do this. And you actually had to be able to, teach your brain to believe that it was safe to challenge your calf muscle, so it's the same thing. So again, bringing awareness into that. As I'm knocking my mic, I'm sorry. My husband is like our sound tech, and I'm like, whack, 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 whack. Have fun editing this. So
that's
all that to
in,
say,
by the way.
No. But all that to say is your awareness is where change can happen. That is where you get to decide to do things differently. According to Harvard Business Review, I think this is fascinating. Higher self-awareness is actually linked to improved relationships and 32% higher job satisfaction.
Wait, say that again?
Yeah. Higher self-awareness is linked to improved relationships and 32% higher job satisfaction.
So if I'm more self-aware, or if I work on self-awareness, I have the ability to, maybe I don't need a new job. Maybe that can help improve my quality of employment, my quality of life.
Yes. So many times, because again, in the last business, there was, people were building businesses to, maybe leave their 9-to-5. And when I would sit down and ask people, like, tell me why you want to leave your 9-to-5, they're like, I hate it here. It's miserable. And they saw the only way to get out of the misery was to leave the job, instead of first addressing, how can I show up differently in my job that might change how I feel about my job? Like, what is in your control? But I think a lot of people were showing up to their 9-to-5 like, I hate it here. I don't like it here. And their brain was just gathering all this evidence for why this is a miserable place to be, instead of, well, hold on, what is in my control? How can I show up differently into my workspace where I'm not creating misery for myself? And that could be a whole nother podcast episode. But
so I'm just making some connections here. So, earlier we talked about not being self-aware puts you on autopilot. And I think sometimes we think in our lives, in order to get a different outcome, we just need to do some drastic change. We need to move. We need to change jobs. We need to break out of a relationship. We need to have a midlife crisis, right? But maybe what needs to happen is an introspective kind of like energy put on developing self-awareness, that can actually be the taking the controls back, instead of just some big change of finding a new job or making these drastic changes that give us the illusion of power and control.
Well, and maybe a big change is still necessary.
Yeah, sure.
But learning to take the pause and the inventory first and being like, well, hold on. How can I show up here better? If I were different, how might my circumstance be different? Because we can't change our circumstances, but we can change who we are in our circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And maybe that's maybe the idea there is that's the first step, and change of a job or whatever is still the next step. But maybe the check is, hey, I need to do this, because if I do change my job and I haven't done the check, the self-awareness check, I'm bringing this into the next.
100%. This is where the statement, like, everywhere you go, you are there. Everywhere you go, you are there.
I had a middle school teacher that said that to us when I was like 7th grade, and he's like, I just want to get you guys, I want to tell you guys something. Wherever you go, there you are. And this, I'm not even joking. This popped into my head just a couple days ago. I was just reminded of it. And I remember hearing it when I was in middle school, just being like, dude's crazy. What are you talking
professor, about? Of course I'm here.
And now I'm like, wow, that's actually pretty profound.
I'm just picturing like a bunch of 7th graders, like just looking at the teacher being like, blink, blink, blink.
Taking me 30 years to figure that one out.
But yeah, or I just think of that SNL sketch with Adam Sandler where he's doing he's pitching a vacation in Italy.
Oh,
and he's like,
man.
Do you remember? Okay, this is so good. This is such
hysterical.
An example of life, because I think so often we think the answer to our happiness is changing our external environment without first addressing our internal environment.
Yeah.
And so good. He was like, welcome to, the tours to Italy. And, it's beautiful and wonderful. You're going to be in wine country in a villa. But I just want you to know, if you are a sad, miserable, depressed person, where you are now, you will also be a sad, miserable, depressed person in Italy.
So he's saying, if you come to Italy, you'll still be sad and
depressed.
You'll
still be sad and depressed, just in Italy. And you know what? Wherever you go,
there you are.
There you are. And so what an amazing invitation. I just wonder how much money people would save per year if they stopped throwing their money at buying external solutions to an internal problem. That's deep.
Or just how much change they actually could see if they stopped investing in the external and started investing.
That's what I mean.
In the internal. Yeah.
Yes. It's just, we did this survey of over 1,000 people, and we had them survey different areas of their life, and where they put their time and their energy and their money and the things they want to improve. And it was all different categories of their life. It's just like, how do you rate your fulfillment in this category, in this category? The lowest score was in identity and self-worth.
Yeah. Right. In terms of investing time, energy.
No, it was
purpose.
like, that was the one that scored lower in like their fulfillment.
Yeah.
And what matched was also, that was the area where people spent the least amount of time and the energy and resources solving. I'm like, how are we not seeing the connection? And I really do think it's because, maybe it's easier. It's easier to buy the thing or, take the trip. It's more fun. Like, it's hard doing the internal inventory of your work and asking, Why am I showing up in this way? Why do I keep engaging in these behaviors even when I know that they will inevitably become detrimental to the life I actually want to build? Why am I doing this? And having that compassionate inquiry with ourselves where we ask why. Why are we doing this? So first we have there's the opportunity of hindsight, having awareness in the hindsight, like look at the behavior when it's past. But really what we want to actually do is build awareness, not just hindsight, but how do we actually bring awareness into the patterns when they're happening? So you have
some tools for that?
I've got some great tools.
Okay.
Because again,
I can tell you, I need some tools. You've convicted me in a lot of ways.
You have tools. You are great with this. You're underselling yourself. Okay. So, this one's huge. It's learning to pause, is, taking a pause, noticing, like pause and notice. That's it. If you could just take a moment, 5 seconds, and pause in the moment, in the action. So the next time you catch yourself, first, I think it would be really good for you to write down your inventory of your, coping behaviors or your self-sabotage behavior. Like, I know that when hard things are, on my agenda, it's the scrolling, it's the, Netflix, it's the books, or it's food. So if you know that that's the thing, the very next thing you need to do is invite a pause when it's happening. Okay, like I'm now in the bag of chips. Here's my pause. Like pause, we're going to breathe, and then we're going to invite the question, what's happening? Like, what am I running from? And not just like we all think we're running from a task. You're never running from the task. What we're actually running from is the discomfort associated with the task.
Unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's you have me thinking, because I'm pretty sure the task I don't want to do is run on the treadmill.
Okay, why?
Because I don't want to run on the treadmill.
Why?
Because it's boring.
Why?
Because it's hard.
Say more.
It makes me tired.
Okay, perfect. This is what you're running from. The boredom, the physical exertion. Like it's the experience. You're not avoiding the treadmill.
Okay, wait, hold on. What about when I reach for the cookie?
Okay. So this is so good. You guys, like it's like I'm coaching my husband.
Why not? I'm here. Let's go.
Okay.
I think other people are thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
I love Oreo cookies. I think they're amazing.
Okay.
They're terrible for you. This is not a health show.
But this isn't just like about the Oreo cookie. We have to look at like what was the scene before the Oreo cookie? What is the Oreo cookie soothing?
I think usually it's because I end up in the pantry when I'm bored.
Perfect. Okay, so it's the emotional feeling of boredom. Look at our kids. Our kids hate boredom. They're like, I'm bored. We're like, dude, you would never survive in the 90s.
Yeah, for
like,
real. For real.
You want boredom? I'll show you boredom. Like, right?
Serious.
But again, some things, it's like the discomfort of boredom and that stillness, especially like, or the feeling for me, what comes up for me when there's boredom is it's the feeling of restlessness. I don't sit with that well in my body. So I'm going to go and do something to soothe the restlessness. So it might be like, an activity, reading, I don't know, whatever I can do to soothe restlessness. So again, with the idea of like, again, you're in the pantry, you're grabbing the chip. You have to ask yourself, okay, what am I avoiding? We're always going to think it's the task. Like, oh, I'm avoiding, sending that email, having that conversation. And I'd be like, that's not what you're avoiding. Because if it was a delightful email with somebody you love and you left the conversation feeling happy, you'd be like, I'm not avoiding that. It's like, I'm avoiding mundane. I'm avoiding something that takes effort. I'm avoiding something that like is going to force me to have to sit down and think, and use my brain more. We always have to assign like what, because again, remember, this is like self-sabotage is really self-preservation from discomfort. So we have to ask ourselves, where's the discomfort? What discomfort am I running from? So again, in the moment, pause, ask, what's uncomfortable here? It's not the task. You always have to ask, what is the potential discomfort I assign to the task?
Yeah, I will say, I think moments where I've caught myself specifically reaching for the cookie when I'm on a cut or, I think
love
about
that you keep talking about cookies, by the way.
because I really want one right now, apparently. But the thought that, usually helps me prevent that is like, am I really hungry? Do I really want this? And usually it's like, okay, how is this going to make me feel tomorrow? Because let's be honest, when I reach for that cookie in that moment, it's usually not just one cookie. Sometimes it's like 2. No, it's way more sometimes. But what I'm saying, so in the moments when I do pause, I've had that moment where I'm like, hey, wait a minute, why am I here? What am I doing? And I have the chance to reflect. Usually I have the ability to choose a different route.
Yes. So
I don't win every time.
That's a great bridge because again, we said it earlier. What does awareness create? Awareness creates choice.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then I basically in that moment when I pause and I have that ability to think through it, and I still choose the cookie. At least I chose it, and it wasn't just like a autopilot decision.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's now you know what you're doing. You're like, I'm consciously now choosing this, knowing what's up. But it's like, it's the pause that we talked about. Notice what's actually happening and then choose.
Okay. So question. There's something that you do every time we leave the house. Is that a self-sabotage
No.
of being on time?
No. Do you want to tell the audience what you are talking about, Scott?
Every time we leave the house, let me know. This is another thing to drop in the comments.
I assure you, I am among the many.
Yes. Well, okay. Every time we leave the house, we literally are usually running late. Usually.
I think we're running on time.
Yeah. Not every time. Not every time, but usually we're trying to get out of the house. The kids are in the car. If we're going out of town, we're taking the dogs are in the car. The bags are already packed. And I'm sitting and I'm waiting. And Kristen's not coming yet. She's not there yet. What is she doing? She's fluffing pillows. Fluffing pillows, folding blankets.
And wiping down our counters.
And wiping down counters.
I will always do those 3 things.
So hold on. Have we thought about this? I'm just thinking about tools here. Have we thought about pausing?
Oh, you want me to pause when you're already waiting in the car?
And thinking through this, like in the sense of like, am I doing a self-sabotage?
It's not self-sabotage. I'm sabotaging you.
Yeah.
There's no. That is actually a form of self-care.
Okay.
And here's how I'm going to argue that. For me, I know that you know this. Like I don't do well. My nervous system feels a lot of anxiety when there's cluttered counters, dirty counters. The fluffing pillows, I'm not really sure. I'm going to be honest.
All right. At least
I'm not really sure about that one.
Awareness is choice.
Well, I'm going
really liking
to
these podcasts.
have to sit with that one. But the counters is for me, I know that when I come home from being away, the very first place we walk into
that's fair.
is our kitchen. And so the counters are in my line of sight. And if I were to see messy, cluttered counters upon returning from a trip, everyone is asking for mom to be stressed within 5 seconds of walking in that door. And I could choose to have a different thought and feeling and emotion about the counters, but no, my way of doing that is like, I'm going to clean up the counters before I leave the house because I know that sets me up well for when we come home.
Yeah. No, I think that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you outed me.
Well, it's more just going after the pillows. You brought up the counters.
Yes. I just like to fluff the couch cushions before we go. I'm not sure why, but it is what it is. All right.
So tool 1 so far is pausing in that moment.
Pausing.
5 seconds. Take a deep breath.
So that's in the moment.
In the moment.
Okay. Then a hindsight exercise would be journaling. Like take a moment in your phone, you write down the event, and then you write down like what was your avoidant behavior or what was your coping style.
On that, can you give like is there a couple questions that we could work into the journaling practice, like certain things, not 5, give us like 1 or 2 good questions that would help prompt that.
Yeah. So what was the task at hand?
Okay.
What did I do instead? Like how did I distract, run, avoid buffer. And then the next question would be, what was I telling myself about the task? Like, what emotional experience or discomfort was I assigning to the tasks? So I think it'd be great to name the discomfort you were running from. So if it's frustration, fear of being misunderstood, like naming that, and then asking yourself, okay, what is that fact or what is true? Or, conditioning yourself, kind of having like a inner pep talk. First of all, even if you just do that right there, what was the emotional experience I was running from? Great. We've brought so much awareness to this and it still can create change. If you just do that, that's great. The next layer would be, what do I want to tell myself about this task or about that emotion? Do I either need to reframe it? Is this my fear speaking or is this a fact? And then, okay, how do I need to see this differently so that I'm not running from it next time? Like, how do I need to change my relationship with frustration? How do I need to change my relationship with disappointment or exhaustion or work or whatever it is, or boredom? That's huge. If we could just have a conversation about boredom, how often we get in our own way because we're trying to avoid boredom or constant entertainment. And then kind of giving yourself a new, like, here's my thought reframe about that task. The reason why I didn't do that is because I was afraid someone was going to misunderstand me. Or, okay, how do we want to rewrite that in a way that creates less resistance to the task later? Or how do you want to do that next time? So another one I read that was so good is, actually, I'm not great at this, but this is something I think I want to try. And actually, you and I both did this when we both went on our separate retreats, is they had a mindfulness or meditation every morning.
Oh, yeah.
I loved it. And so, guys, this is so huge for understanding yourself or building a tolerance to unpleasant emotions or just discomfort in general. We don't have to name it emotions. As some of you are like, I'm not emotional. Cool. Let's just call it discomfort. Is meditation. Sitting quietly for 5 minutes and keeping your mind quiet. At first I was just like, what am I doing in the meditation? Am I like I just never understood it.
Yeah.
But learning to like that it's a discipline in directing your brain and bringing it back to center. And what you're doing is you're training your brain. It's like putting in reps at the gym.
Yeah.
And so if you could do this in meditation, right? Then when you go and sit down to do the tasks that you don't like doing, you have practice in directing your brain when it wants to wander, when it wants to go do other things. Or, for me, gosh, my ADHD is just raging when I do meditation. So I can just imagine, like, it's like, why is my right leg cramping? What is that? What's going on with my knee? I could just get so busy. So, meditation, practicing mindfulness, like just being with yourself, even if it's 2 minutes, learning to direct your brain. And there's so many ways to go about that. And then lastly, was asking trusted people for feedback. Yikes. Talk about vulnerable. Again, trusted people who have your best interest in mind, people who care about you, people who love you, people who know how to be clear and kind.
What would be, so are you asking them questions? How are you engaging that person?
So I would ask you. So for me, you would be my trusted person. I'd be like, hey, like, what are some things you notice? Like, what do you see me doing when I know there's a task at hand? Or how do you, like, I'm trying to understand myself better. It'd be like,
Oh man, it just reminded me of this. Okay. So yeah, I remember when I was coaching a number of years ago, I was coaching at high school soccer. Do you remember this? And I remember coming back from, I think we're like mid-season or something, and I was pretty exhausted. I was working another job. You were working a couple jobs. And I came home and I had started using reaching for the drink as a coping mechanism for relaxing. And do you remember there was one night you came home? I came home from practice, and I opened up the cabinet and you were like, hey, are you reaching for that? Why are you reaching for that? Essentially, like, what is the reason that you're going to grab that? Are you doing that because you want to, or is that, are you using that as I can't remember how you phrased it.
Or are you telling yourself that you need it?
Yeah,
I think I remember that's what
exactly
I said.
it. You said, are you telling yourself you need it? And while I didn't reach out for you to give insight on that, it was extremely insightful and offered me the ability for choice.
Yeah.
Because before I was just it was almost becoming habitual.
Now, okay, I feel like it's really important to add a caveat to that, because maybe someone is listening to this and they're thinking of their spouse or their partner, their loved one, and being like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just, next time I see my spouse engaging in the behavior, I'm going to ask them.
Yeah, no, I'm not advocating for that per se.
How was it that you were able to not hear that in judgment? Was it how I said it? Was it like, because that could have gone.
Oh no. Well, and I'll say, I mean, full transparency, the way the fact that you asked the question did ruffle me a little bit on the inside. You asked it very calmly, and it wasn't accusatory or anything like that. And so I think there's scenarios there's other things that there's a foundation that has been built prior that helped that.
Yes.
And it came off very loving and so forth. But just the question, it jarred me. And if I would have given into I would say
your pride?
Yeah. Yeah. If I would have given into my pride, I probably would have snapped back. And so I'm not advocating that people go do this, but for me in that moment, it was, you had given me awareness to something you had observed on how I was returning home and how I was using a particular coping mechanism.
Yeah, and I would even say the reason why I felt safe asking you and being curious is because there was safety established in the marriage, so just kind of giving some context to that. And I was I think I do remember just genuinely having nothing but like curiosity and compassion around it. Just being like, hey, like, are you doing that because you want to, or because you're telling yourself you need it?
Yeah. But I'm just thinking through like how that tool would work. And it's one example. I think another way is having, I would say, usually it's like when we work with our kids, and in the moment, if they're having a tantrum or they're breaking down or they're very, heightened, it's not the time to have this deep conversation on how we handle our feelings or whatever. And so part of, I think this tool is setting a foundation prior, saying, hey, I'm working through trying to become more self-aware and figure out these areas where I might be sabotaging myself that I'm not aware of. It would probably be good to entertain that conversation with whoever your trusted people are prior to, basically giving them permission, I guess, is a way of putting that.
Yeah, it's no different than, I like to see it as like a form check. With the physical so we have PT. Our personal trainers, right? And they're all virtual. And so occasionally they'll be like, hey, send a video of you doing a back squat so I can check your form.
Right.
Which is important to do. So as awkward as the video is, I'll send it so they could be like, okay, your knees aren't tracking over your toes properly, or you're not getting enough depth in your squat. So this is just an opportunity. Where are you intentionally asking people, trusted people in your life, to do a form check in your life?
This kind of comes back to our past episode talking about why community is so valuable. So
important.
Right?
Honest community, not people that are just tickling your ear and telling you what you want to hear. And I'm even hearing that just as we're, as we're building our thing. And I've learned that there are some people that are like, I go to them knowing they're going to poke some holes. Yeah. And that's what I want. And then I know there are other people that are going to say, I love it. Good job. And I'm thankful for those people. I think we need both, but I know the real value in creating change and, creating something I'm proud of is going to be from people that are like, hey, improve this. Have you thought about this? Have you considered this? So again, inviting people in to do form checks on maybe your habits or how you're showing up in your life. And it's a very vulnerable position to put yourself in. So first, create a lot of compassion for yourself first, because if you are somebody that naturally runs to shame as how you see yourself or self-sabotage your habits, if you sit down and ask somebody, hey, what are my blind spots? And you haven't taught yourself self-compassion, you're going to use everything they say as ammo against yourself on why you suck. And shame is going to receive that whole conversation instead of curiosity and compassion, where all change comes in.
That's powerful. I see a future podcast and the idea of like being able to gauge your growth edge, right? Like being able to know how far is too far, how far is not far enough. That's a whole yeah, that's good. I like that. Okay.
So kind of wrapping up this self-sabotage or self-preservation, it's how you cope with stress is something you've been carrying for a long time. Like these are just behaviors that, again, like your brain thinks it serves you. It's just like, hey, I'm just here to keep you safe and make sure we're not too uncomfortable. But, it's not your fault that you self-sabotage. Welcome to being human. But it is your responsibility to bring awareness and to do something about it. And so, our hope for you today is that you invite people to do a form check in your life. Just notice the pause. Take a minute. Find as much time as possible. Like write out your inventory of like, hey, here's areas I know I have like coping mechanisms that do not serve.
Yeah.
Like it relieves the pressure. Because think about it. These coping mechanisms, they do provide relief. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it.
Right.
They are self-soothing.
And maybe some of them come from childhood in the sense of these did serve you at one time, and you can say, thank you. You got me through that season. I'm now noticing that this is no longer serving me.
Yes, 100%. So again, with self-sabotage, it is self-preservation. Bring awareness into it. Practice, noticing, pausing, and those things.
That's so good. Hey, if you liked this episode, just make a comment, leave a review, hit subscribe if you're on YouTube, hit the bell. And we look forward to just continuing these conversations. We're really excited about these. And next week we have another doozy. I'm really excited about next week. Do you want to tell them? Or you want me to tell them?
You tell them. You tell them.
Okay, so next week, we're going to talk about this idea of the invisible load that we all carry, and sometimes unknowingly, and how it is.
It is the silent and unseen emotional, mental burdens and stressors that we carry that actually leads to stress and burnout and what can physically and emotionally drain you. So we're super excited to talk about the invisible load.
So that's the rest of our show for today on the Happy Well podcast. Pursuit of Happy Well. We hope you'll join us next week, and we'll see you then.